Here we are. This is John Lewis Brooks. We're picking up at chapter 11, verse 13 of the book of 2 Kings. And when Athaliah heard the noise of the guard and of the people, she came to the people into the temple of the Lord. Notes. And it does seem that she was unsuspicious of danger and brought no guards with her, nor any large body of attendants. Verse 14. And when she looked, behold, the king stood by a pillar, as the matter was, and the princes and the trumpeters by the king, and all the people of the land rejoiced and blew with trumpets. And Athaliah rent her clothes and cried, Treason, treason. Notes. Well, she's right. There was treason, all right, but it had been committed by this evil queen. Verse 15. But Jehoiada the priest commanded the captains of the hundreds, the officers of the host, and said unto them, Have her forth without the ranges, and him who follows her kill her with the sword. For the priest had said, Let her not be slain in the house of the Lord. Notes, Jehoiada had previously given an order that her execution should be taken place outside the temple. Verse 16. And they lay hands on her, and she went by the way by the which the horses came into the king's house, and there she was slain. Notes, and thus ends the life of one of the most wicked women recorded in the Bible. She may have actually been the worst. Verse 17. And Jehoiada made a covenant between the Lord and the king and the people, that they should be the Lord's people, between the king also and the people. Notes. The meaning is, simply put, that the high priest renewed the old covenant, understood to exist between the king and the people on one hand and God on the other. So almost like, a little bit like a marriage vow, really. Renewing the vows, if you know what I mean. And also that they would be faithful to God and God to them, that they would maintain His worship, and that He would continue to protect them, according to Exodus chapter 19, verses 5 through 8. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long, but anyways, verse 18. And all the people of the land went into the house of Baal and broke it down. His altars and his images broke they in pieces thoroughly, and slew Mattan, the priest of Baal, before the altars. And the priest Jehoiada appointed officers over the house of the Lord. Notes, we're seeing the reestablished regular courses of worship right here, something that Israel had apparently been missing for quite some time. Verse 19. And he took the rulers over hundreds, and the captains, and the guard, and all the people of the land. And they brought down the king from the house of the Lord, and came by the way of the gate of the guard to the king's house. And he sat on the throne of the kings. Notes, not till he had placed Joash on the royal throne of his ancestors in the great throne room of the palace, Jehoiada was content with the work of that day, to be sure. Verse 20. And all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was in quiet. And they slew Athaliah with the sword beside the king's house. Notes. Now, it seems to me like the intention of whoever it is that wrote this book right here, the writer is trying to connect the period of tranquility with the removal of Athaliah, and therefore to point her out as the cause of Judah's great difficulties. Like I said, she was one wicked woman. One person caused quite a bit of those problems. Verse 21. 7 years old was Jehoash, or Joash if you prefer to call him that, when he began to reign. And that's actually a real deal right there. He was just a young kid whenever he was pronounced to be the king. And of course he did not have quite the rulership that people would think, but he was definitely the Lord's anointed. Chapter 12. In the 7th year of Jehu, who was the king of Israel, Joash began to reign over the southern kingdom of Judah. And 40 years reigned he in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Zebiah of Beersheba. And Jehoash, or Joash, did that which was right in the sight of the Lord all his days, wherein Jehoiada the priest instructed him. Notes. After Jehoiada died at the age of 130 years, Joash did evil in God's sight and brought judgment upon his people, as well as himself. The godliness of Jehoiada was evidently a great influence upon Joash, and consequently the Lord allowed him to live long past a normal age. Verse 3. But the high places were not taken away. The people still sacrificed and burnt incense in the high places. Notes. Evidently, Jehoiada attempted to get Joash to remove these high places, but was not successful. There was to be but one center of worship in Israel, as there is but one place of worship for the Christian, and that is Calvary. To Israel, Christ is the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. To the church, he is the Lamb slain from before the foundation of the world. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 20, and Revelation chapter 13, verse 8 documents that pretty thoroughly. Verse 4. And Jehoash said to the priests, all the money of the dedicated things that is brought into the house of the Lord, even the money of every one who passes the account, the money that every man is set at, and all the money that comes into the man's heart to bring into the house of the Lord, let the priest take it to them, every man of his acquaintance. Notes. And this fourth verse right here seems to imply that the priests were little considered with all the funds being designated toward repairs and whatnot. I'll go ahead and continue with verse 5. Let the priest take it to them, every man of his acquaintance, and let them repair the breaches of the house, wheresoever any breach shall be found. Notes. Even though he was rather weak in other matters, it seems that Joash proved himself capable, at least as it regards this task. And it was quite an important one. Verse 6. But it was so that in the 23 year of King Jehoash, the priest had not repaired the breaches of the house. Notes. Now, keep in mind, no charge is made against the priest for any kind of embezzlement or fraud. They had simply been negligent, and probably because of the lack of money. Verse 7. Then King Jehoash called for Jehoiada the priest, and the other priests, and said unto them, why repair ye not the breaches of the house? Notes. Now, this is of course the temple. Now therefore receive no more money of your acquaintance, but deliver it for the breaches of the house. Notes. In other words, funds would be received in a different way. Verse 8. And the priest consented to receive no more money of the people, neither to repair the breaches of the house. But Jehoiada the priest took a chest, and bored a hole in the lid of it, and set it beside the altar, which is the brazen altar, on the right side as one comes into the house of the Lord. And the priest who kept the door put therein all the money that was brought into the house of the Lord. Notes. The suggestion was probably that of Joash, but the ecclesiastical and civil authorities worked harmoniously with the suggestion. Verse 10. And it was so, when they saw that there was much money in the chest, that the king's scribe and the high priest came up, and they put up in bags, and told the money that was found in the house of the Lord. Notes. In other words, they counted the money that had been placed in the chest, put there for the repair of the temple. And we'll have to pick up in chapter 12, verse 11 of the book of 2 Kings. Thank you, and God bless.